Hey, welcome back to the show. If you haven't already, subscribe, like the video, click the bell, tell your friends and family. The post-mortem of the election continues from both sides and will for a long time, of course. The reason Kamala lost was the moment. The reason Trump won was the moment. It's never like that. It's never one thing, one event, one moment. Kamala lost and Trump won for a whole list of reasons. And we can certainly rank order them, which I'm not going to try to do today. I'm going to list some reasons. We haven't done any statistical analysis on this to properly rank them. Democrats are pushing issues the majority of Americans do not support. That's the reality of that. Most of the Dem agenda is not supported by more than 50% of the American populace. They knew it and used the moment in history they had, the White House, the House, and the Senate in 2021, to push through these unpopular policies, whether America liked it or not. Open borders, defund the police, the culture wars, ESG, DEI, CRT, the Green New Deal, attacks on free speech, reducing voting integrity, non-citizen voting, unequal application of the law based on party and ideology. I posted a video on July 21st titled, "Democrats have no one to blame but themselves for this mess," that you can see here on my channel. It's worth a watch or listen if you haven't already watched or listened. Describes some of what I'm talking about today in a little bit more detail. As for the reasons why Kamala lost, you have to go back to 2020. In the selection, I'm using that word deliberately, the selection of Joe Biden as a Democrat candidate to block the progressive Bernie Sanders, who was winning in the primary process, from gaining the nomination. Remember Biden's basement campaign, the irregular and suspect 2020 election, the introduction of non-requested mail-in ballots in several blue states, many of them swing states. Strangely, once Biden was in office, the progressives gained control over Biden. The man who was a moderate do-nothing senator for decades became the leader of the progressive agenda. But remember, they had blocked Bernie Sanders, who was pushing the progressive agenda. And so here he is, Biden, the moderate, pushing the progressive agenda. That's the agenda Americans rejected on November 5th. Identity politics led the way. Biden selected Kamala as his running mate, the candidate who dropped out of the presidential primary without ever receiving one vote because she had no support, wasn't liked, didn't have what it took because she was a woman. He said that in public deliberately. The executive orders in the first days and weeks of the Biden administration restricting fossil fuels, a forced transition to electric vehicles, ensuring open borders, DEI and CRT in all government agencies, the trans movement in schools and in sports, unnecessary and massive government deficit spending and regulations imposed on the economy, igniting the worst inflation since the 1970s, a Green New Deal masquerading as the Inflation Reduction Act. A more blatant lie in naming of congressional legislation is hard to find than that one. The overreaction to the riots of January 6, 2021, having done nothing about the worst riots and attacks on democracy from the summer of 2020. The deadly and embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan. The overreaction to the Omicron variant of COVID in the fall, winter of 2021 and into 2022. The forced lockdowns, the forced testing, the forced vaccinations, the forced travel restrictions, more deficit spending. Renewed global instability led by the Russian invasion of Ukraine and later the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas, the emboldening of Iran and Yemen and China. Joe Biden's obvious to all but Democrats and the media mental and physical deterioration. Kamala Harris doing nothing as borders are, or anything else for that matter. The lawfare against Donald Trump, the raid on his homes, the efforts to bankrupt him, to keep him off the ballot. Something we've never seen happen before in terms of going after former political leaders. The unrelenting bias of the mainstream Democrat-controlled media, academia, sports leagues. Less than full support of Israel over re-election concerns in states like Michigan and Minnesota, trying to balance the Jewish vote against the Muslim vote. Joe Biden deciding to run for re-election and the party blocking any Dem challenger in the primary that wasn't. By January of 2023, Biden's mental and physical problems were on display at all times. Concerns about economic data manipulation as a means to cause Americans to think the economy was better than the one they lived in and struggled in. The rise in crime, no cash bail, the rotating door police stations and courtrooms, the thought police, the language police, the cancel culture. The first assassination attempt on Trump and the efforts to downplay the event by Democrats and the media. The derision towards and name-calling of Trump supporters. And because Joe Biden decided to run again and the party didn't allow a serious primary, the June 2024 debate that exposed it all and the unprecedented events to come. Joe resigns. Kamala gets crowned. A huge mistake. She had never run a good campaign. She never had to in California, a state dominated by the left. There were so many better candidates, but because of money, the money raised by the Biden-Harris campaign, which only she could use, she was coronated. Kamala was at a huge disadvantage in terms of time. She had a tough road ahead, to be sure. Not an ideal place to be put in. She wasn't a good candidate in 2020. She wasn't a good candidate in 2024. Let's just admit that. Her unwillingness to do unscripted interviews or even hold a press conference revealed her weakness as a candidate. The lack of specificity on issues and the bad policy ideas didn't help. The poorly run campaign, the misuses of campaign donations to build crowds, not to see or hear her, but to see or hear celebrities. The arguments in the closing days of the campaign, Trump is a fascist, Trump is Hitler, democracy, abortion, it was all too contrived and wasn't landing with the electorate. The media lying to the viewers every day about how she could win, pushing poll after poll showing she was ahead and could win. The polls were wrong. The platform was wrong. The candidate was wrong. Ultimately, to whittle it down to just a handful of things, it was inflation, deficits and debt, restricting speech, the social and cultural push, open borders, a national malaise, the word salads and the laugh, Biden's garbage comment, and the unrelenting effort by Trump and his team brought the Democrats to this crushing defeat. 312 electoral college votes for Trump, winning the popular vote, taking control of the House and the Senate, and still having more control over the Supreme Court. Democrats need some reflection. It's not likely, though. Already, Democrats across the country are forming a resistance to Trump. And I ask, is that election denial, by the way? Americans spoke. They preferred Trump and his agenda over Kamala and her agenda. So the only resistance can come in the form of civilized debate in Congress and voting for or against bills, right? Sadly, the Democrats are going to fight tooth and nail, not through votes, not through debate, not through persuasion, but via the courts to slow down and block Trump and all that he intends to do. It's going to be messy. Democrats have no one else to blame but themselves. All right, that's all I have for you right now. Always try to buy American.